nickel-plated steel. Introduced to the mass market in the late 1960s by companies like Ernie Ball, these are by far the most common strings found on modern electric guitars. Manufacturers take a steel core and wrap it in a thin layer of nickel, combining the magnetic properties of steel with the smoother, softer touch of nickel. This hybrid approach emerged as a standard when players needed a brighter sound to cut through increasingly loud rock mixes. They offer a balanced tone with plenty of attack, making them a versatile choice for almost any genre. Iconic players like Slash and John Mayer rely on these to deliver their signature tones night after night. Because of their universal appeal, you can find them in virtually any gauge, typically ranging from ultralight 8s all the way up to heavy 12s. If you want to try this industry standard for yourself, popular sets like the Ernie Ball Regular Slinky and Daddario EXL110 are perfect places to start. Pure nickel. Originally rolled out in the early 1950s by legacy brands like Gibson and Fender, this was the initial industry standard for electric guitars. Instead of just a thin outer plating, the wrap wire surrounding the core is made entirely of nickel. Because nickel is naturally less magnetically reactive than steel, these strings produce a warmer, mellower tone with a slightly reduced output. Vintage enthusiasts and blues players often gravitate toward them to recreate the classic, rounded sounds of early rock and roll, and they tend to cause less wear on a guitar's metal frets over time. Legends like Jimi Hendrix historically relied on them, and modern tone purists like Eric Johnson still use them to capture that unmistakable vintage warmth. You will typically find these sets offered in classic sizes ranging from 9s up to 11s. To bring that classic vibe to your own instrument, you might want to string up with popular options like Fender Original 150S or DR Pure Blues. Stainless steel. Pioneered for the electric guitar in the 1970s by manufacturers like Roto Sound, these strings cater to players looking for the absolute maximum amount of brightness and sustain. The wrap wire is crafted from stainless steel, which interacts intensely with magnetic pickups to deliver a crisp, punchy, and highly aggressive tone. They first gained popularity among metal and hard rock guitarists who needed fast, technical playing to articulate clearly through heavy distortion. While they resist corrosion exceptionally well, the hard metal can feel slightly rough to the touch and will chew through softer fret materials faster than other options. Hard rock and thrash metal guitarists like Scott Ian have often favored these strings for their durability and aggressive bite. Accommodating standard and drop tunings alike, they generally come in gauges ranging from 9s up to heavy 13s. For players seeking maximum brightness and resilience, great starting points include Daddario Pro Steels and the Ernie Ball stainless steel Slinky line. Cobalt Strings. First introduced to the market in 2012 by Ernie Ball, this relatively new addition was developed to push magnetic response to its absolute limit. Engineers discovered that cobalt alloys interact with guitar pickups more efficiently than traditional steel or nickel, resulting in a noticeably stronger signal right out of the instrument. When you plug in, you get increased dynamic range, tighter low frequencies, and extremely clear highs. They possess a distinct, somewhat silky feel under the fingers and are highly favored by modern progressive rock and metal players who require precise tracking for complex riffs. Virtuosos such as John Petrucci and Steve Morse have heavily adopted them to maximize their dynamic expression and output. These strings are readily available in traditional gauges from 8s to 11s, alongside heavier hybrid sets for modern metal. Since Ernie Ball pioneered this material, their Cobalt Slinky and Paradigm Cobalt sets remain the definitive choices for players wanting to test these waters. Coated strings. Debuting in 1997 when Elixir strings applied a microscopically thin layer of polymer to the wire, these were designed to solve the problem of rapid tone loss. Traditional metal strings inevitably lose their brightness as oils, sweat, and microscopic debris accumulate between the wire windings, so the coating acts as a physical barrier against moisture and dirt. While early versions sometimes suffered from a dampened, slightly muffled tone, modern manufacturing techniques have made the coating virtually imperceptible. They cost significantly more upfront, but they retain their fresh sound for months longer than uncoated varieties. Touring professionals like Wayne Sermon of Imagine Dragons and metal virtuoso Chris Broderick often choose them to survive the grueling sweat and humidity of constant live performances. You can easily find coated strings in all standard sizes, most commonly ranging from 9s to 11s. If you want to drastically reduce how often you change strings, industry favorites like Elixir Nanowebs or Daddario XS Nickel are fantastic investments. Flatwound strings, developed in the 1950s by traditional string makers like Labella and Thomas Dick Infeld, these use a flat ribbon-like wire for the outer layer instead of standard round wire. The result is a polished string with absolutely no finger squeak when sliding hands up and down the neck. Jazz guitarists have championed them for decades because they produce a distinctly dark, warm, and thumpy tone with very little sustain. While they remain a staple in jazz and some vintage rhythm and blues, their lack of brightness and stiff physical tension makes them highly unusual for conventional rock or pop playing. They remain the undisputed choice for jazz masters, with legends like Wes Montgomery and George Benson using them to achieve their iconic, mellow sounds. Because jazz players generally prefer higher tension for a thicker tone, these sets typically run heavier, ranging from 10s up to sturdy 14s. When outfitting a jazz box for that smooth tone, players consistently reach for classic sets like Tomastic Infeld Jazz Swing or Daddario Chromes. Half-wound strings, brought to prominence in the 1970s by manufacturers like Daddario, these aim to find a functional middle ground between standard round wounds and completely flat strings. They start their life manufactured with traditional round wrap wire, but the outer surface is then mechanically ground down and polished until it is semi-flat. This gives players a smoother playing surface that reduces unwanted string noise without completely sacrificing the bright, biting attack of a standard string. They remain a niche choice. Seasoned session musicians and fusion masters like Jimmy Herring have turned to them when seeking the perfect balance between articulation and quiet playability. Due to their specialized nature, they usually come in medium sizes, ranging from 10s to 12s. To get this unique hybrid feel on your guitar, the Daddario Half Rounds and GHS Bright Flats are some of the most reliable sets on the market.